It has officially been a full year since Beyond 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 was released, so I am here yet again to talk about the Crane Wives. Big shocker, I know. Today we're looking at the band's most recent album one last time and seeing if my opinion has changed on any of the songs over the last year. Because, after all, time sure does change you. Hi, it's me. I'm editing the video a week later, and I had the genius idea that I want to include stats on the screen for each of the songs. One of those stats being how many times I personally have streamed the song since its release. But I have run into a strange issue that I don't know the cause of, which is that from the months of like July all the way through I think mid to late November, I just don't have any streaming history for some reason. I know for a fact I definitely listen to a lot of music during those months, but the app I'm using to track my listening history sure as hell doesn't make it seem like I did. So this is just to say I am still going to put on screen how many times the app I use says that I have listened to each of these tracks, but take it with a grain of salt because for the album only songs, it's missing about 2.5 months of listening history, part of which being right after it was released when I was, obsessively listening to it. And for the singles, it's missing even more time and therefore even more streams. So I'm still going to put the streams on screen so you can get a vague idea of the frequency I listen to one song versus another, but just know that the actual number isn't that accurate if we're looking at a total. It's good for comparison, it's not good on its own, if that makes sense. But with that said, I will let you get back to the video. Don't worry, I will be popping back in 2 more times. I have things to say. Track number 1 is Scars, which I am going to put as a very, very high A tier. Yes, believe it or not, Scars has been dethroned. It is no longer my top track for the album. And if you've watched my initial ranking video I made last year, I'm sure you can probably guess what song has taken its place, but that is a topic for later in the video because right now we're talking about Scars. And Scars is still by far one of my favorite tracks from the album. It's a very upsetting song, which is kind of the point. It does a very good job of making you feel the anguish of feeling like there's something fundamentally wrong with you and like there's nothing you can really do about it. Yes, the song is written about adoption-related trauma and how that's affected Emily specifically, but the lyrics are written broadly enough for it to be relatable to people that haven't experienced that kind of stuff. It's broad enough for it to hurt even if you yourself aren't adopted. There's a lot of lines in Scars in particular that stand out to me, but the one standout line that I'm choosing to highlight for this track is "I'm still burning like a tire fire and I don't know why." It really encapsulates the whole vibe and just general message of the song. It's not just that something's missing and you feel empty, it's that something is fundamentally wrong and it's making its presence very known. It's hard to ignore a tire fire. I don't know if you've ever seen one in person, but they're not exactly pretty. It's very hot, it smells like shit, and it creates a lot of very big, very dark smoke. It's not a pretty sight or something that is easily ignored, which is very fitting for this song. Regardless of how pretty the track may sound, it's not about a very pretty subject matter. I mean, obviously, this is the Crane Wives, what do you expect? Well, moving on to track number 2, which is Bitter Medicine, which I'm going to put as, I guess like a high B tier. Bitter Medicine took a minute to grow on me for some reason. I don't know, something about the track just really didn't hit at first, but damn am I glad that I actually gave it a proper chance. I love this song. It does a good job of taking a vaguely upsetting topic and turning it into a catchy, fun little tune. And I mean, it definitely helps that the subject matter for Bitter Medicine in particular really isn't that dark or that serious. Anxiety, imposter syndrome, all that shit is no joke. But in this song in particular, it feels very lighthearted when compared to a lot of other songs in this album and also just by the band just in general. That is one thing I have mentioned multiple times about the Crane Wives in the videos I've made about them, is they make upsetting songs. It's why can't we be happy? Why you gotta write this shit? And the main standout line for me in Better Medicine is "Don't look up to me, I'm not as tall as you think." Not only is it just like a vaguely clever twist on a common saying, it's also something that I personally can relate to. I'm not gonna go into detail, I don't want to get personal on this channel, I want to keep my shit to myself, but what I will say is that keeping up a general facade of knowing what you're doing and having your shit together, even if it's not true, unfortunately leads to other people building up this certain perception and this certain view of what you are, and in some cases it leads to them putting you on a bit of a pedestal and viewing you as something to strive towards, when in reality, you're just as fucked as they are. Such is life and all that fun stuff. Track number 3 is Higher Ground, which you guys are not going to be happy about this one, but Higher Ground I'm going to have to put in D tier. I think it's gone down a tier since last year. That's kind of sad. But Higher Ground is a song that has me so conflicted for some reason. On the one hand, it has definitely grown on me over time. I do enjoy it more now than I did whenever I made the first video, but it's still just not a song that works for me personally. I don't know, something about the way that it sounds just kind of puts me off. Like, it's a good enough song for it to be in my playlists and for me to listen to, but more often than not, you know, I never seek it out, and if it starts playing, it's like a 50-50 chance that I'll let it play out, you know? So a lot of the time I just skip it. I have to be in like a very particular mood for me to let this song play all the way through. You know, it's still unfortunately very much just a background song for me, and it may not be a standout song, but it does still have a standout line, which is "Am I in danger or am I the threat?" I love the way Kate sings that part in particular, and it's also just an interesting question. You know, it's fun. I don't know if fun's the right word, but I like it, okay? Track number 4 is Predator, which I am going to have to put at a very, I mean, we'll say like a high C. I feel like I'm going to say this about every single song at this point, but Predator is very weird for me to try and rank, because it's, on the one hand, it's a very, very solid song. Every time it plays, I do have a genuinely good time listening to it, and it is vaguely relatable as far as the subject matter goes, but I also just don't listen to it like at all. You know, when the album first came out, I initially put it in A tier because, like I said, it's a good song and I have a good time listening to it. But over the course of a year, it's just really fallen through the cracks for some reason. You know, I honestly forgot that this song existed, and so I feel like if it's that forgettable, I can't really rate it all that high, you know? Like, I don't know what happened or why I stopped listening to it. I just know that I don't listen to it that much, so I don't feel like I can justify ranking it any higher than a C, especially considering it's my 3rd least streamed song on the album. It may be a forgettable song, but it does still have a standout line, which is, "Shouldn't you know better? You took advantage of another anxious people pleaser." And the reason why it stands out to me is because I love the perspective shift. You know, most of the song is spent placing the blame on yourself and saying like, man, I should have known better. I did this to myself. But then here at the end of the song, the blame is placed where it should have been to begin with, which is on the person that is causing the pain and the hurt. Because on the one hand, yes, there is a certain amount of responsibility you should take if someone is repeatedly hurting you and you keep going back, but at the same time, it's much easier said than done to get out of situations like that, and usually the first step is learning to accept and to acknowledge that it's not your fault. You know, it's not your fault that they're a shitty person. That's on them. They should know better. Track number 5 is Say It, which I am putting as a low A tier. Some of y'all will be very happy to hear that Say It has grown on me tremendously over the last year. I don't know what happened. I put it in my work playlist, and one night it started playing, and I really started feeling it. And now I really like the song. I don't know. It's just, it hit me for whatever reason. It snuck up on me. I mean, it's still far from my favorite track from the album, especially since it's not a subject matter that is even remotely relatable to me personally, but I do really like the song. I really appreciate the sound of it, even if I don't necessarily feel the lyrics all that much. You don't have to relate to a song or really even know what the hell is going on for it to resonate with you. You know, I have absolutely no idea what the hell Not the Ghost is about, but that isn't going to stop it from being my 2nd favorite track from Foxlore. Something about that song just speaks to me, even though I have no idea what the hell it's about. You know, I have been listening to it for years, and I still haven't been able to piece together the subject matter. I don't know, I'm a little slow. Sometimes things just don't connect, and then this song in particular does not connect. My best guess is that possibly it's about anxiety. You know, like it's not the actual action that's haunting you, it's the fear of the action, and it's not the fear, it's the ghost that leaves me haunted. I don't know what the hell it's about, but it speaks to me, okay? It hits very, very hard, which, I mean, the more I talk about it, the more I realize Not the Ghost is not a very good comparison here, because I know what Say It is about. It's not exactly subtle. So maybe a better comparison would be another Foxlore track, which is Pretty Little Things, because Pretty Little Things is a song that could not have been written more just not for me. You know, this song was not made for me at all. It's a very slow song. The instrumental is very stripped back and subdued. It's about a mostly gendered experience. You know, in my opinion, it's about like a feminine experience for the most part. And then I also just don't fuck with people nearly enough for me to be able to relate to the subject matter of the song. But that's not going to stop it from hurting my feelings from time to time. The instant Pretty Little Thing starts and I hear that little guitar, I feel it. All of a sudden, I'm transported to an alternate reality where I'm a woman crying in her bedroom over some bastard that broke her heart. And Say It definitely doesn't have quite the same effect as Pretty Little Things. I don't think it hits nearly as hard, but it's the same general vibe, you know? It's a song that's very much not made for me at all, but that doesn't stop it from resonating with me for whatever reason. I guess that's just what happens sometimes whenever a band makes such soulful music. You don't have to relate to it for it to speak to you, you know? The standout line for me for Say It is actually the opening line of the song, because it is the only part of the song that I can actually relate to. But again, we're not getting personal here, so I want to elaborate on why it's relatable. Track number 6 is Mad Dog, which obviously is still a very strong A tier. I admittedly don't really have much to say about Mad Dog, but I will concede that it still fucks severely. It doesn't have any emotional impact for the most part, but it's still just a very catchy song about a topic that mostly everyone can really relate to. You know, unfortunately, fighting desperately to survive and make ends meet is a very common theme these days. The song has got this sense of urgency and panic to it, which really adds to the experience, and, you know, it fits the subject matter. And the standout line for me is, brace yourself, you're gonna drag that rock around for the rest of your life. Because life really is just a never-ending cycle of Sisyphean tasks. It never ends, it just keeps going, they just keep coming. Okay, we're going to pause for a second. It's basically a week after I recorded this initial recording. You know, I've been on a Cranewives kick recently since I've been working on this video, and I think I've changed my mind about Mad Dog. Not necessarily with its ranking, but I have changed my mind on the standout lyric for the song. I mean, I'll be honest, 9 out of 10 times that Mad Dog plays, I don't really pay attention to the lyrics. I'm having too much of a good time just jamming out and vibing with the sound that I don't pay attention to what the hell Emily is saying. But yesterday at work, I actually paid attention for like 2 seconds, and the lyric calling out to an echo and just hoping for a different refrain is crazy. It's literally in the pre-chorus. How did I miss that shit? I forgot how good of lyricists they are, I guess. I don't know. I've been slowly delving deeper into metal lately, and I guess I forgot where my roots are, where I came from. Track number 7 is Arcturus Beaming, which I am putting as like a mid to low A tier. I want to say I put Arcturus Beaming in B tier last year. I don't entirely remember, but what I am sure about is that I love this song so much. Someone commented on the last video and said that this song was life-changing for them, and I can see why. It's a very good song. At least for me personally, it's a grower, not a shower. It took some time for me to really enjoy the song, but somewhere along the way I found a live performance of the band performing the song before it was released, and before they started playing, Kate was talking about the origins of the song and kind of a bit of the meaning behind it and how it came to be, and I just haven't been able to hear the song the same way ever since, and it really hits. You know, it works. It really does. And one thing I do really appreciate about Arcturus Beaming is that, yes, it is a vaguely sad song. You know, it's not necessarily a happy subject matter. You know, I mean, it literally starts out talking about worshiping pain, but despite that, it still has this like positive sound and outlook to it. You know, it's not just submitting to the pain and the misery like Scars. It's acknowledging that it's there and striving towards a future where it isn't. You know, it's picturing a future free from all this shit you've got going on right now, which is a very welcome topic for a Cranewives song. You know, it's nice to take a break from the pain for a little bit, which unsurprisingly means that my favorite part of the song is still the same as it was last year, which I have learned is not a bridge like I said it was. It's just a verse. Apparently it's just another verse, but either way, it's a very good verse. You know, ending on the sentiment of there's still time, it's not too late, nothing will change until I change is very powerful, especially since it's followed up by a full minute-long instrumental that just lets that thought kind of linger, you know? Track number 8 is Time Will Change You, which according to my notes is S tier, period, no hesitation, because Time Will Change You is by far my favorite track from the album. I might even go as far as to say is just generally speaking a top 5 Crane Live song for me personally, which if you watch my initial ranking video last year, this might come as a little bit of a surprise, or it might not. You might have seen it coming. I don't know. I don't know what you're thinking. I don't know how your thoughts work.
If it had been like the live version, it probably would have been the S tier song for the album, but it isn't, so it's going to B tier. And who knows, maybe over time it'll grow on me and I'll prefer it over the live version and it'll be the S tier song for the album, but for now it's going to sit in B tier, unfortunately.
But for those of you that haven't watched my initial ranking video, let me just catch you up to speed real quick. I initially found Time Will Change You somewhere around, I think, like April of 2023, because YouTube recommended me a live performance of Emily playing the song. I fell in love with it immediately and had that shit on repeat for like at least a few months straight. But since it wasn't performed with the band, it was just Emily and a guitar, I assumed it was just going to be another Emily solo song that seemingly would never have a proper release. You know, I thought it would just forever live on YouTube through just random live performances. So imagine my surprise when Beyond 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 was released over a year later, and Time Will Change You was one of the tracks on the album. I was so unbelievably happy until I heard the song. You know, obviously a solo live performance is going to sound very different from an official studio release recorded with a full band, so I knew going into the song that it wasn't going to sound the same as what I was used to, but something about the studio version just fell flat for me. Really, my main issue, which I still kind of feel and agree with to this day, is that the studio version is so much less expressive whenever it comes to the vocals. You know, I still stand by the fact that this
Ain't that the way it always goes? Some of us float and some of us sink to the bottom.
hurts so much more than this.
Ain't that the way it always goes? Some of us float and some of us sink to the bottom.
To a certain extent, I do feel like the song just works so much better with less instrumentation and more of a focus on the vocals. But I will admit that the studio version has obviously grown on me substantially over time. You know, if I pretend like the live version doesn't exist and I focus on the studio version as its own solo thing, it's a very, very solid track. It's the clear winner of the album for me, hence the ranking. And one thing I did notice in the process of scripting this video that I find interesting is the fact that the studio version is substantially longer than the live performance. You know, the live version that I had gotten used to was about like 3.5 minutes long, while the studio version is almost 5 minutes. It's not necessarily like a detriment or anything serious. I find it interesting, you know? I didn't realize there was that much of a difference between the two, but there really is.
I do want to pop in real quick, because I'm in the middle of editing this, and I feel like I didn't word parts of this very well. Because, I mean, obviously the main reason why the studio version is substantially longer than the live version is because there is more of a focus on the instrumental. You know, the live version, for the most part, is just a straight shot all the way through. There's a couple spots where the instrumental gets to shine, but it doesn't last long. You know, it's mostly from beginning to end just vocals with like maybe a couple seconds of instrumental in between. And so the reason why the studio version is longer is because there are multiple different instrumental breaks throughout the song. I know I literally just said that I feel like this song works better with less of a focus on the instrumental, but I am gonna go back on that slightly because I do really genuinely love the instrumental in this song. Like the choices they made instrumentally, I feel like are very, very solid, very good. I love the strings. I don't know if it's a violin or what it is. I don't know. I'm not knowledgeable about music, but whatever string instrument they've got going throughout the song, I'm glad they put it there. It sounds very, very nice, and it adds this somber, almost like eerie feeling to the song that I do feel like adds to the experience. So I guess my main gripe with the song is less with the instrumental and it's more with the vocals. And even with the vocals, it's with like 3 lines, okay? I'm just being so picky and particular solely because I love this song so much. And I'm not good with change, which is part of the reason why I fucking love this song. So yeah, I just wanted to pop in real quick and say I'm perfectly fine, and honestly, I'm happy that the studio version is substantially longer than the live version. I do like the instrumental. I like what they added in. I'm just not happy with certain vocals musical choices, you know?
But before we move on to the next track in the album, I do just briefly want to touch on the lyrical content of the song, because I've recently come to a realization, which is that Time Will Change You is actually a fairly positive song. You know, if I hadn't heard the song at all, if I had just pulled up the lyrics, sat down and read through them, I would probably assume that it was a Kate song, because it has like almost a similar vibe to Keep You Safe. You know, they're both songs about a fear of sorts and the results of said fear. Keep You Safe is an aversion to risk, and Time Will Change You is obviously an aversion to change. They're both songs about the anxiety and the struggle of dealing with that fear, that aversion, but with a positive spin. You know, it's not just about the fear, it's also the actions and the thoughts and the affirmations that get you out of that fear. Sure, at the start of Keep You Safe, we're talking about how fear has made you miss out on having a proper childhood, but then the next thing you know, you're being very clearly told that nothing worth doing comes easy, that time isn't your remedy, action is. And then Time Will Change You, sure, at the start we're talking about how time tortures you and about planting hearts in a grave, but then the next thing you know, we're talking about growth and how this too shall pass. It by all means should be a comforting song, but God, does it not feel like one. I genuinely don't know what it is about this song, but it hurts my feelings. It really does. It's peak I'm in a bad mood and I actively want to make it worse kind of music. I have to stop myself from playing this shit at work if I'm already in a bad mood, because I will just immediately start spiraling. It's bad. So if you ever see me and this song is playing, don't talk to me, don't look at me. I don't exist right now. I'm fighting battles you could never hope to understand, alright? You wouldn't get it, but I've already spent way too long talking about this one song, so I will still give you a standout line, but I'm not going to elaborate on it at all. I'm just going to say that my favorite line in the song is, "Give me a chance to get this right, I'm learning how to let go." Okay, next song. Goddamn, 8 minutes on that one fucking song. Song number 9 is Black Hole Fantasy, which I am putting as a low B tier, and I can already hear people throwing a fit over this one being demoted from A down to B tier, because this is one of the tracks from the album that is generally well received and loved overall. I haven't looked at the streams, but I'm sure it's probably one of the most streamed tracks that isn't a single. But regardless of all that, I'm sticking to my guns here, okay? It is B tier. And not just B tier, it's low B tier, just to rub salt into the wound, you know? And don't get me wrong, it's a very solid track. I do genuinely enjoy listening to it, but I just don't listen to it is the problem. So I don't feel like I can really justify putting it any higher than B tier, considering it is one of my least streamed songs from the album, and I never actively seek it out. You know, the only time I listen to Black Hole Fantasy is if it plays on shuffle, and that's really it. But the standout line of the song for Black Hole Fantasy for me has less to do with the lyrics and more to do with the delivery. There's something about the way Kate sings the "I wonder when it's caving in" line and all the ones that follow just really does it for me. It does such a good job of showing off the anxiety and the frustration that make up the core of this song. Track number 10 is Red Clay, which I am putting in C tier because it is my least streamed track from the album, unfortunately. And it's not because I don't like the song. It's, you know, it wasn't made for me. It very much was not. But with that said though, I do still want to place it above Higher Ground, because even though I don't listen to this song pretty much at all, I will admit that anytime it does play, I do think that I really enjoy it a lot more than I do Higher Ground, because I will admit Red Clay, even though I don't listen to it, anytime it does play, it is very much a good vibe. I do like how it sounds, I do like how it feels, and it works as a great like palate cleanser of sorts. You know, it's a nice little break. Anytime I'm listening to a lot of very heavy music, whether it be sonically or lyrically, Red Clay is a nice little break. After all of that, it's like a warm hug, you know? It's just a nice, sweet little comforting song. And I think Dan actually sings the lead, which I could be wrong, but I think this is the first time he's been in the lead in a Crane Wives song. So that's fun, that's interesting, I guess, you know? Works in its favor. I like Dan, he's cool. And the standout line for me in Red Clay is "Harvest the fruits of being afraid." Because oftentimes in life, you're not gonna know what the hell you're doing. You're gonna be scared, you're gonna be lost, but you're gonna have to just keep going and do it anyways if you ever want to get anywhere or accomplish anything. Do it scared if you have to. Growth isn't supposed to be fun. And track number 11 is River Rushing, which I am putting as a very, very high B tier. Not so fun fact I found out in the process of scripting this video is that River Rushing is the second least streamed song on the album, which is a real damn shame. This is such an underrated track. I love it so much. The only reason it's not in A tier is because if I play it too much in a short period of time, it does get old fairly quickly, so I have to like ration it out a little bit. But whenever I do ration it out, it hits very hard. I love the consistent theme the Crane Wives have going, where most of their albums will have at least one track that is just vaguely ominous for whatever reason, and where everyone will sing all together or take turns, or the whole band is really included in the experience. Something about them just hit so hard. This song was on repeat for me for months after the album first came out. As a fun fact, this album came out whenever I was visiting family in Arkansas, and like 2 days later I had to ride my motorcycle back to Texas, and you bet your ass I played this song an absurd amount of times on the ride back. Every time I had to stop for gas, I put this song in the queue, and then I would also put Mad Dog, then I'd put River Rushing after Mad Dog, and then I'd get back on the road every single time I got gas. Alright, it was a nice little reset, get me back on the road, get me vibing, And surprisingly, River Rushing has a bit more lyrical depth to it than its predecessors as far as the vaguely ominous songs go. Like, I'll be honest, I never really paid attention to the lyrics of this song, but in the process of scripting the video, I was trying to pick out my favorite line from the song, and I was sitting there and I was reading through the lyrics, and I realized that, oh shit, this is actually about something. It's not just ominous, it's like an actual proper song, which sounds stupid, I know, but I don't know, sometimes songs start playing and my brain just shuts off and I'm just vibing. This was very much one of those tracks where it just starts playing, I stop thinking, I start vibing. But looking at the lyrics, there's something to it, I fuck with it, I really do, which not so smoothly segues to my favorite line of the song, which is, I know I can't grow with a hand around my throat. But with that said, I should stop rambling. This video is probably like 30 minutes long, I don't know. My script was about 3,000 words, but I have gone off script a lot. With ranking videos, the script is less of a script and more of a guideline. This video is probably long as hell. I'm just gonna end it off by showing you my cat. Alright, Mochi, send us off. Say bye. Say bye to the people for me. Okay, we're definitely off center. This is not the same shot we were in before. It's whatever. Real quick, one thing I will say is that a lot of people have actually been commenting on the Crane Wives videos, a lot more than I expected. I kind of half expected to upload those videos and they get like 10 views, maybe a couple comments. But both of those videos, both Ranking the Crane Wives and The Best Band You've Never Heard, have just continued to get views over time and get a lot of comments. I swear at least every 2 weeks I will get a comment on one of those videos. It kind of shows that there is some demand to be had here, that people are actually enjoying the content. This is my very awkward way of saying, if you are interested in me making more Crane Wives related content, I guess let me know in the comments. I do have ideas for a lot more videos, and I do have an interest in making them. I don't know if y'all have an interest in watching them. I kind of want to make a video kind of like this, which is a more like in-depth, not necessarily analysis, I'm not really analyzing shit, but just an in-depth talk and review or whatever of each of the band's albums, because I don't know, they have a lot of albums and they're very good. There's a lot of things to be said about each of the songs, so if y'all would be interested in that, I could make it a monthly thing where once a month for a few months I just talk about a Crane Wives album, which I'm saying that because I do actually have one planned for next month, because it is the anniversary of my favorite Crane Wives album, so I'm making that video no matter what. But if you guys like this, and if you like that video whenever it eventually comes out, I can make this a monthly series for like a half a year, basically, just get through all the albums. And yeah, I guess that's the actual end of the video. I don't know. Bye bye.